Fox 2 presents Hancock and Kelley.
Good Sunday morning and welcome to the special edition of Hancock and Kelley on Fox 2. We're looking at the top primary races in Missouri, which is 2 days now until Election Day, August 6th. On the right, John Hancock.
Good morning.
On the left, Michael Kelley.
Good morning. This is what we live for, boys.
It's game time.
It is.
Right, here we go. On the agenda, perhaps the biggest race nationally is in St. Louis. The Democrat race for Congress, where Congresswoman Cori Bush could be the next member of the Progressive Squad to lose her seat. There's also a big Republican congressional race on that side. Bob Onder versus Kurt Schaefer in the 3rd District, stretching from St. Charles to Columbia and beyond. We'll get into the Missouri's governor's races, both Republican and Democrat, plus predictions from John and Michael, along with the weird and wacky from this campaign season. We'll also cover the supercharged Republican Missouri Attorney General's race. And our quote of the week is on the importance of campaign endorsements. It is from Donald Trump. We begin with Bush v. Bell. St. Louis County prosecutor, Democrat Wesley Bell, is hoping to unseat Democrat Congresswoman Cori Bush. She is seeking a 3rd term in a bit of a late July surprise. A phone call that was somehow recorded was leaked to media. In that call, more than a year ago, Bell told Bush that he'd never run against her and that she could count on it. Obviously, he changed his mind, dropping his bid for the U.S. Senate to run against Bush for the U.S. House. Michael, does any of that matter? And which is politically dirtier? Recording the phone call and leaking it just before the election, or actually saying you won't do something and doing it?
No, nobody should be surprised in politics. Everything's fair game. I don't think it was dirty on either of their parts. This is what they do to each other, kind of reflective of their personalities.
How do you see the race?
I think this is Wesley Bell's race. I think it's going to be extremely close. Let's remember, Cori Bush came in and unseated a political dynasty, and she did that with people power and a lot of people who were energized, knocking doors, pulling out voters. We've seen unprecedented money come into this race of the likes I've never seen before. And the preponderance of that's going to Wesley Bell. And so therefore his infrastructure is strong as well. This is going to be a close race, but Wesley Bell's going to win it. And it's going to wind up being the most expensive congressional race in the country. Think about that, here in St. Louis.
How do you see it, John?
Well, I think.
What do you make of, I mean, the national traction this race is getting,
Yeah.
Is it just because she's in the squad?
Yeah, she's not had a particularly illustrious congressional career. Let me be generous. Yeah, and here's the thing. When Cori Bush won that seat, it was a low turnout primary election. The Clay machine.
When she upset Lacey Clay.
Yes, the Clay machine was kind of, I think, took it for granted. They didn't do the kind of groundwork that historically had marked the Clay political efforts, and he got caught asleep at the switch. She comes in and wins. The reason Bell's going to win this race, I think, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close, but we'll see. But I think he wins the race when you look at how much money has been spent here. What money does is it creates attention, it creates activity, and it inflates turnout. And so the louder this race has become, the more and more likely it is that Bell was going to win. Why? Because the turnout was going to be higher. It's going to be high. And so Bush's core supporters, they're still there. They're still going to turn out. They still are mobilized. They're just going to be a smaller percentage of the electorate because of the spending in the race. And I predict Bell's going to win this. He could win this thing by 10 points.
Wow. That would be a shellacking. We'll get to the governor's races in a moment, but staying in Congress on the Republican side, we have 2 former Missouri state senators, Bob Onder of St. Charles County and Kurt Schaefer of Boone County, running for Missouri's 3rd District congressional seat in the U.S. House. The current 3rd District Congressman, Republican Blaine Luetkemeyer, is retiring after 6 terms. The district stretches from St. Charles County to Columbia, Mo, and beyond. John, what does this race come down to?
Well, this is a really fascinating race because you've got 2 guys from opposite sides of the district. Onder's population base in a Republican primary is a bit stronger than the geographic base that Schaefer has
St. Charles
over in
County
Columbia.
versus Columbia
Yes.
City.
And so Onder has an advantage there. Onder's also raised a lot of money. The other fascinating thing about this race is the competing endorsements. Onder having Donald Trump's endorsement, and he's the only candidate in this race that was endorsed by Donald Trump. Schaefer having the endorsement of the incumbent Blaine Luetkemeyer, who was a popular multi-term elected member of Congress. So you've got these competing endorsements as well. Lots of advertising, lots of money spent in the race. I think I give the edge to Onder because of the geographic base that he has. But I think this one will be relatively close as well.
What do you think? Is it Jefferson, St. Charles counties part of the district versus?
Yeah, versus the rest.
Boone
and
County,
typically,
Cole County.
you would expect the MAGA candidate to come from the rural part of the state, and that's really not the case. Kurt Schaefer is really kind of a traditional Republican. He was one of those people down in Jefferson City trying to solve problems. You'll remember Bob Onder is a part of that Freedom Caucus that brought the whole legislature to a stop, and they spend all their time grabbing on to Donald Trump's leg. I don't know much about Republican primaries, but I have to imagine that Donald Trump element gives them an edge. But Kurt Schaefer is one to watch, and these folks outside of the St. Louis area really believe this district is theirs, and I think they're going to show up.
Now to the governor's races. We'll start on the Republican side. Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, and State Senator Bill Eigel are the top three. A new poll done for the Missouri Scout has Kehoe and Ashcroft tied, and Eigel 9 points behind with 15% still undecided. John, is this still anybody's race? And what's really going to swing it one way or the other?
Yeah, so I work for a PAC that supports Mike Kehoe's candidacy. I hope he wins. And I think the race is going to be tight. The one consistent thing that I've seen in the polling for the last several weeks is that it really is a two-way race. Bill Eigel's consistently in third place, consistently quite a bit behind the other two. I've seen surveys that have Kehoe up a few points. This last one that you cited shows a dead heat. This is going to be a close election. And one of the interesting things is there's a lot of tension between the Ashcroft and Eigel voters in that they're both kind of playing in the same field for voters. And the more that Eigel had performed in the race, he was taking a lot of that support from Ashcroft, and Kehoe running up the gut with a traditional conservative Republican message looked like, well, I mean, Kehoe closed a 30-point gap in this race from March until today. I think it's going to be very close on Election Day. I think Mike Kehoe is going to win it, and I think he'll be the next governor of Missouri.
Maybe the biggest strike against Kehoe and for Ashcroft is that Kehoe is not the son of a former governor, U.S. Attorney General, and U.S. Senator John Ashcroft. Well, people who don't know much about the race, they sit down and look at that ballot. They recognize that one name.
Yeah. As a Democrat who thinks all three of these would be bad, the most compelling of them to me is Mike Kehoe. And the reason why is he's a self-made man from right here in St. Louis. Started a auto company, winds up doing ambulances, has grown a big business in rural Missouri, but hasn't forgotten his roots. I would agree with John. I think this is a two-way race between Ashcroft and Kehoe, kind of the legacy politician versus the traditional Republican. I think Mike Kehoe pulls this out, and I think he pulls it out with the help of a lot of non-traditional support, which means voters from the urban areas, unions in particular, who are out there working hard for Mike Kehoe. I think that may help put him over the end.
His campaign had a lot more money than the Ashcroft campaign. We'll
Yep.
see if that is the deciding factor as well. In the Democrat race for Missouri governor, the top two candidates are State House Minority Leader Representative Crystal Quade and businessman Mike Hamra, who worked in the Clinton administration once upon a time. Both are from the Springfield, Missouri area. Hamra is heavily self-funded. Quade is not. How do you see this race, Michael? What are the winner's chances in November against the Republican?
So I'm working for a PAC that has and is supportive for Crystal Quade. She's the Democratic leader. She's been the face of the opposition of the radical right down in Jefferson City. And I appreciate candidates who are fighting that battle of common sense down in Jefferson City. Having said that, she's facing somebody who was able to throw $3 million into a race. And typically, Andy, money in politics wins. I think this race right now probably leans a little towards Mike Hamra simply because of the amount of money that's been spent. Crystal Quade has to be able to connect with Democratic voters and remind them, hey, I fought the good fight for us down in Jefferson City, as opposed to this businessman who just wants to build his resume.
The funding here is drastic, right? The Hamra edge.
Yeah.
But she's got a great personal story. I mean, you see in one of her ads, she's the first person in her family to graduate high school. She really came from nothing. I mean,
she did.
But no one's going to hear it, really.
No, this is a little bit like the two violin players fighting over who's going to get the solo on Nearer, My God, to Thee on the Titanic. It's largely irrelevant what happens here because they're not going to prevail come November. But I wish them well. You wonder why a guy like Sam Hammer is spending multi-millions of dollars to be the Democratic nominee for governor in Missouri. Seems to me, unless he's, maybe he's going to launch a line of clothing or something. But I mean, other than drawing attention, I don't see that it's going to accomplish much.
You got the abortion measure likely to
You
be
do.
available.
I mean, they're hoping that lightning strikes.
Pull a lot to the Democrat side of the ledger, right?
Right, and it's encouraging that we're seeing businessmen stand up and wanting to run as Democrats. I think they're getting frustrated with the nonsense they're seeing on the right as well.
Up next, the impact of early voting. 2 of us already have, and 1 of us will before Tuesday. Plus, Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey looks to hold on to his job. He's facing quite a challenge from attorney Will Sharp, who's part of Donald Trump's legal team.